we kind of let these things boil up,
Mhm.
right? And we don't have a good way to be able to express our complaints or to be able to talk about things in our relationship. And so we keep it bottled up for such a long time that then it turns into criticism,
Mm.
right? So we have so many complaints, and then it becomes a barrage. It becomes a total like a machine gun.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to feel love when you're being beaten down, or like there's a storm of complaints coming your way.
Yeah,
And
that's
so I
real.
think, yeah, for sure.
That's real because we know that life and death is in the power of the tongue. So when you use that word beat down, like it's literally beating beating someone down with your words. We're kind of distraught. It seems like we don't have anything left to give because we've just been beaten down for so long, and we don't know that there is actually a better way than criticism.
I have put everything into this relationship. What do I have to show for it?
This is not what I signed up for.
I'm afraid of what will happen to the kids if we get a divorce. I'm afraid of what will happen to me if I stay in this marriage.
I'm not even sure that I believe in love anymore.
I want to stay married, but I don't even know why, because it's not making me happy.
How can I feel so alone when I'm not even single?
So many people are struggling with this exact thing.
We have to normalize the struggle.
I mean, a perfect relationship, what is that? Does that even exist?
Having a metric to gauge where you are right now.
Staying in isolation, it's a death sentence.
It's almost like being buried alive.
Positive change just doesn't happen overnight. I mean, do you even want it to? Well, no, of course you want it to happen overnight.
This is how we decide to walk in the promise of life more abundantly.
Ultimately, you are the one who decides how good your relationship is.
Take the next step.
Borrow someone else's hope.
Borrow our hope.
Every relationship
always has room to grow.
Welcome to the Let's Grow Together podcast. I am your host, Danny Williams at Growth Coach D, and I have the fabulous, the one and only Coach Elary Hall. And we are here because every relationship always has room to grow. And we've discovered that your growth, the process of growing your relationship, happens much better when you're out of isolation and you are tapped into the power of community, transformational relationships that help you mobilize your relationship from wherever it is to a better place. And this podcast, we're going to be talking about criticism, because that's one of Gottman's 4 horsemen. Coach Elary, what's been your experience with the horse of criticism?
Well, nobody likes it, to be honest. And there's this kind of almost like a misnomer out there that's constructive criticism, right? Like there's this idea that we can somehow coach it or couch criticism in such a way that it's actually, no, I'm being really positive. I'm trying to help you. You know, it's really interesting so much, especially in today's mindset and even like almost, I don't want to say self-esteem, but self-esteem movement. There's this whole area of I am not enough in whatever way that is. And anytime we're criticizing someone, that's essentially what we're saying. We're saying you are not enough. You're doing something in such a way that I don't like it. It's not meeting my needs. It's not good enough. And so I need you need to change because you are not enough. And no matter how we try to dress that up, it is still criticism. In fact, in my practice, I talk about criticism as being like a wolf in sheep's clothing. And I have this little wolf that I have little cotton balls glued on top of. It's not very convincing. Okay. You can still see that it's a wolf. There's no doubt. You're like, that's not a sheep. That is very obviously a wolf with a bunch of cotton balls stuck over it. And so we have to really keep that in mind, that anytime we're talking to someone that we love about something that we think needs to change, even if we honestly believe that it's something that's going to help them, it is still a difficult pill to swallow. We're going into very vulnerable places, even though it may be necessary, even though it may be something that needs to happen in order for our relationship to grow, in order for it to thrive. You know, we're so much into talking about how relationships and anything in life, you know, God has given us the natural world to teach us about his plan and about his nature. and about our own nature. And so that's why it's so helpful when we think about, okay, well, how are we going to grow this relationship? And if you've done any kind of gardening, you know that sometimes you've got to pull back. You've got to prune, right? And even if it's painful, even if it's difficult, in order for something not to go wild, there has to be strategic pruning. There has to be strategic cutting back. But at the same time, if you go in and you just hack something down, it's going to take a long time for that plant to regrow. And that's exactly what criticism and complaints, and we're going to talk about the difference of those things today in our podcast.
Yeah.
But inevitably, it is cutting down. It's saying this isn't good enough, but we need to do it in such a way that it is not hurtful, that it's not harmful. So just like pruning can be helpful, but a storm that comes through and knocks half a tree down, it's going to take a long time for it to recover.
That's good. One of the things that you said very early on was that when you're criticizing someone, criticism is always of someone's identity. You know, it's like who they are. And that therein lies one of the unique distinctions between criticism and complaints, because when you're criticizing them.
Yes.
And nobody likes that. And there's actually a much better way to get what you actually want. And if we're not so preoccupied with the insulting, criticizing lingual, and we get more so into the actual behavior,
yes,
then just maybe we'll be able to resolve that conflict in a way that causes us to grow in love instead of draining all of the love out of our relationship. And so
exactly.
Now, what were you going to add something?
Well, I just think that a lot of times we kind of let these things boil up, right? And we don't have a good way to be able to express our complaints or to be able to talk about things in our relationship. And so we keep it bottled up for such a long time that then it turns into criticism, right? So we have so many complaints, and then it becomes a barrage. It becomes a total like a machine gun shooting at someone, in which case, and even if those things are valid, again, it's just going to deteriorate, and it's going to hurt the relationship, because we all want to be in a relationship for love, right?
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to feel love when you're being beaten down, or like there's a storm of complaints coming your way.
Yeah, that's real.
I think, yeah, for sure.
That's real, because we know that life and death is in the power of the tongue. So when you use that word beat down, like it's literally beating someone down with your words. You can wear someone down, and some of us, we're kind of distraught. It seems like we don't have anything left to give because we've just been beaten down for so long. And we don't know that there is actually a better way than criticism to get to the root, and stop focusing on the leaves, the fruit, because if you can fix the root, the fruit will be natural. It'll be there, going back to that gardening example. And so we're going to dive deep on what are some strategies that research, namely the research of Gottman, which we're analyzing this month, has to say on this concept of criticism, which is so pervasive. It seems almost subtle, almost like it's not really that big of a deal, but it actually is. It's one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, one of the predictors of divorce that he noticed is criticism. So we have to steer clear, like it's the bubonic plague that it actually is.
And inevitably, I mean, it's going to come up.
Yeah.
It's our fallen nature to be like this. And so, and the most important part, of course, the first step is awareness. So once we start understanding what's the difference between a complaint and criticism, and then when we see it, are we able to stop the pattern? Are we able to take a timeout? Are we able to have a break? The Gottmans are so wonderful in helping us understand that you can do that. In fact, it's necessary to do that. And it's what healthy couples do. It's not that they don't have, it's not that they don't have any kind of conflict. It's that they are able to manage it better, and they take more responsibility for their own emotions to be able to say, okay, let's take this down. And they don't put a lot of meaning on the conflict, right? Saying, since we have criticism in our relationship, it's no good, we might as well start over, right? This is one of the predictors of divorce. Obviously, we're going to get divorced, so let's just do it now. That's not the point of their research. The point of the research is if these things go unchecked, it's kind of like Scrooge, right? When they're talking about all the visions that Scrooge sees into the future. And they say, well, if these things go unchanged, I see the empty chair of Tiny Tim, right? It's the same thing. If this goes unchecked, yes, this will happen. But what does Scrooge do? He wakes up the next morning. He's totally changed. He's totally revived because he sees, and this is what's wonderful, is he sees this possibility of this terrible future, but he also sees his own power and responsibility within the present.
That's
right.
good.
He looks at the past, he sees the present, and he sees and becomes empowered by that future, knowing that there is a lot that he can do to change. And that's what we're all here about today, is knowing that individually we have a lot that we can do to change and help our relationships grow.
And the first step to doing that is having an awareness, like you said, of where we are. We may not be in Kansas anymore, but we can still make the kind of progress that we're looking for, because when you don't know where you are, you can't get anywhere.
Right.
But when we know where we are, there are infinite possibilities that exist. We can get everywhere. So that's what we're going to help our listeners do on today. And we want to dive deep into some of Gottman's work, because there are a lot of helpful resources that are able to help you analyze where you are and then start to strategically mobilize you, because you're not stuck there. You're not stuck there. You are not stuck there. Every relationship always has room to grow. And so let's grow, baby. Let's grow together. So we have this wonderful list of assessment tools and questions that we're going to dive deep into with Gottman's work. There is the 7 principles for making marriage right. There's so many great resources that they have, and trainings and videos and courses. And so we want to challenge you to dive deeper. But even as we go and share what we are touching on in our podcast, do the research, dive deeper, and analyze this stuff for yourselves. Become a master, get a master's degree in it, so that your relationship can thrive. Coach Elary, you have that list that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that the Gottmans talk about, like we've talked about the 4 horsemen, might be helpful just to talk about them really quickly. The first one is criticism. The second one is defensiveness, and you see those two go together, right? So quickly. The third one is contempt, and the fourth one is stonewalling. And so he has in this book, why relationships fail. Is that what it's called? Why marriages succeed or fail. And there's just this quick quiz that has about 19 questions on it to help us distinguish between a complaint, a criticism, and contempt. So as he says, complaints are important. They're actually healthy for relationships, because if we're not complaining, that means that we're not really being honest about the relationship. And it can mean a couple of things. It can mean, as you were talking about, Danny, before we started recording, that it can mean that the person's just checked out. Like if you stop complaining, you're no longer invested, because you don't feel like it's worth it. And we've all kind of been in that point in a relationship where we get so discouraged. We think, what difference is it going to make, even if I try?
He's not going to change. She's not going to
change. I know exactly what they're going to say, right? They'll never change. And so when we stop complaining, that could be a symptom of that. Our complaint is because we've given up, or it can be because we're not really being very authentic in the relationship.
And sometimes we don't know how to be. If we haven't seen an authentic model, in action, to healthily go through conflict, oftentimes we're just repeating the patterns that we've witnessed. And so it's time to insert some new patterns. That CD can come out. The old CD players. I don't know if we still play CDs, but you can take that CD out and you can put in a new one. You can play a new song, bring it up to the iPod. And we're never, ever, ever stuck with what we've been given. There's always something new. The mind is built to create something new, a new reality to shift, and these infinite possibilities exist for your relationship to grow, to thrive.
Absolutely. So what is a complaint? So Gottman here says a complaint is specific, limited to one situation. It states how you feel. And so here he has this example of taking out the trash. I'm upset because you didn't take out the garbage last night. Okay, so it's very saying talking about my own feeling and a very specific situation, what you didn't do and when. Yes, a criticism tends to be global and includes blaming your partner. You'll often find the word always or never in criticism. You never take out the garbage. Now it's overflowed and that's your fault. I can't ever rely on you. Right, so we have those never, those ever things, and it's a total crit. And really, how can you respond to that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
How can you respond to a criticism like that? It's going to make you instantly defensive.
Yeah.
And I guess the partner who's saying that may feel like, oh, good, I've unburdened myself by saying this, right? Some kind of emotional release, but it's not going to get you what you want. And just like you're talking about, it's creating a reality in which your spouse never and always.
And
it's not opening up that opportunity for growth.
And I know, just as a guy, I work with so many guys who, like, when they hear those words never and always, they just shut down. It's completely shut down because it negates everything else that they've ever done good. And it's just like, what's the point of this conversation? Never. Like, I never do anything right. Like, I'm always the source of all of the ills of the world. And both genders, we have a tendency when things go awry to and Gottman talks about this as well, to be careful not to color the past with the temporary lens of our present troubles and difficulties. And the couples who are able to remember favorably those past good times, it's oftentimes that they are able to continue in this growth and this growth process. But we do want to be very strategic in how we verbalize those criticisms. What are some of those questions that we see here?
So this was just kind of giving us an opportunity to tell the difference between criticism, a complaint, and contempt.
That's it.
So lastly, I'll just say, he says contempt adds insult to the criticism. It's a verbal character assassination in which you accuse your spouse of stupidity, incompetence,
Wait.
etc.
Wait. A verbal character assassination? Ooh. Yes. I just begin thinking of like JFK, Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King, just like people who were literally assassinated. But that's what we are doing to the character of the most important person in our lives. We're assassinating their character. With every criticism. It's a barrage of bullets,
Well, right. And the importance is that we understand that contempt takes it even kind of further. Right. So we have criticism, which is like a judgment. And contempt is like you've condemned something. Like, it is over. That's when a building is condemned, it's over. Like, the only thing we can do now is knock it down.
Wow.
Right. And so that's what contempt does. And so it is, and it's interesting that you have such two similar horsemen, but they're different.
Yeah.
different. And criticism, and when he lists them in order of importance, criticism is the one that is kind of like the least toxic
Yes.
out of the four. And the most toxic is stonewalling.
Yes.
Right. So it goes through criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. That's the order that they're in. So criticism is kind of the least toxic out of them. And then contempt, that's the eye rolling. That's the disgust when you get to that point with your spouse. And of course, we want to avoid that.
Yes.
Obviously.
I would dare say that criticism oftentimes is that's ground zero. That's where it all starts. And so while it's the least damaging to the romantic relationship, most everything is coming through this gateway, so to speak, of beginning to assassinate the character of the person who you entered into a romantic relationship with. And as you start down that path, it's easy to continue on it, because it's a very broad and I guess the word that I would use, familiar path, especially if you're coming from an environment. Oftentimes, what we didn't like, what we experienced growing up, there's nothing that's more sad than when we repeat those same patterns in our romantic relationships, because we haven't strategically, intentionally taken steps to do something different, to put a new framework in place, to say, you know what, no, I know what it's like to live under criticism, to have people tearing me down with their words, and I'm going to do something different. And if I can't figure out how to do it well for myself, I've got to get help. I've got to get into some counseling, some therapy, some coaching. I've got to get, the resources like Gottman, like the marriage assessment book. I got to, get that marriagereportcard.com that's going to help guide me through making these I statements and taking out those you statements, because we can change the trajectory of everything that happens in our lives. And we're never, ever stuck with the paradigms that we've been given growing up. Absolutely.
And that's what I love about the marriage report card and marriage assessment, is because it gives us these early warning signs. Yeah. Right. And when we see that criticism is coming into our relationship, that's an early warning sign. And that's one of the things that we've got to get out. And it can be so pervasive, we don't even realize that it's happening.
Romantic relationships are not always easy. As a matter of fact, some have found it's the most difficult thing they've ever attempted to do in all of their lives. If you're wondering, is there something wrong with my partner? Or is there something wrong with me? The good news is you're probably pretty normal. Everyone struggles. Some just do a better job of hiding it. You can have success in this area and in that one, and struggle where it seems to matter most. Introducing the M Squad, couples fighting together for a love that lasts forever. No longer do you have to struggle in isolation. Now you have safe space where you and your partner can grow in love. Yes, you fell in love, but if love is not growing, there's only one other alternative. Click the link or visit themsquad.com to partner with a community of couples who believe that love should last a lifetime.
But quickly, we're not going to go through all 19 of these questions, but I think this will be fun, Danny. And so let's just see how you do.
Okay.
All right, here's our first one. Is this a complaint, a criticism, or is it contempt?
Okay.
I'm upset that you didn't pay the gas bill.
Oh, so I'm upset that you didn't pay the gas bill. I'm gonna say that is criticism.
Well, it's actually a complaint.
It's a complaint? Okay,
so they're talking about my feelings.
Yep.
And a very specific thing that you did.
So I'll tell you where I got a little taken back.
Sure.
When in my practice, I teach to, as best you can, stay away from the you statements. And so when I heard the you, maybe I'm a little hypersensitive. But once I heard the you, it's like, there it is again. And so what I would have done to reframe that one is to say, I was upset when the gas bill didn't get paid. So maybe I'm an overachiever, but
to never say you. Yeah, there we go.
as much as possible, I try to avoid that, because when you just own it, that word you, it's so quick to grab a hold of that. And then that's when people start to tap into, okay, they're attacking it's my character, my identity, which wasn't in that case, but that was my rationale. Give me another one. Give me another one, Elary.
Okay.
Give me another one.
How can I ever trust you?
Now that one's tough because it's in the form of a question. And I'm also big on questions, because Socratically, you can say so much more than you ever can with statements. How can I ever trust you? I'm going to take that as a complaint.
They have that listed as a criticism.
Really? Oh,
yes.
My goodness.
Yes. Because it's not very specific.
Okay.
Right? It's not talking about a very specific thing.
Okay.
And it's not really talking about how it's affected you. So the thing is, whatever has made you not trust that person, you could turn that into a complaint, but it would need to be something very specific.
And I should have known that, because it said the word you in there. How can I ever trust you?
And
so
ever, right?
Ever,
never. Yeah. How can I ever trust you? Right. So that's a really difficult, how to even respond to that. Okay. Yeah. How about this one? We are really putting you on the spot here, Coach. And you're doing a great job.
Come on, give it to me. Give it to me.
Okay. You are totally irresponsible.
Oh. Now, I'm definitely going to go with criticism on that one.
All right. That one's contempt. Every relationship always has room to grow.
Yes, you are totally, keyword, absolute.
You are totally irresponsible.
Totally irresponsible.
That's like a condemning statement.
Yeah.
Right? That's just like, there is no hope for you. You make me sick. Yeah. You are totally irresponsible. Okay, number 4.
All the way. Okay.
You stupid jerk.
Oh my goodness gracious. I'm scared to answer this one. So you stupid jerk, that is
it's like name calling.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be criticism.
They have that listed as contempt again.
Contempt again. Oh,
again, because I think it's because it's calling you, like we were talking about identity here, right? You stupid jerk.
So the difference between the contempt and the criticism is going to be the contempt and the criticism is going to be the name calling, or is it going to be the implied trajectory of the relationship as a result of this statement? Help us clarify the distinction there.
So yeah, well, let's look at another one here. I should have known you'd pull something like that is the next one. They had 3 contempts in a row. 3 contempts.
I should have known.
Yeah, because that gives you this idea of you're worthless. You have you're condemned, right? I'm not just picking you apart about the things that you're doing wrong, right? It's just like, you are the worst.
We use a lot of these statements without realizing it, how damaging they actually are, how they're in this category of contempt, which is the most dangerous category to be in. Even as I'm answering these questions and looking at, okay, that's just criticism, right? No, that's contempt. Like, when you're held in contempt of court, it's like, this is it. You failed. and you're gonna pay for this. And that whole aura in a romantic relationship, who wants to live, and how can you be happy in that? How can you how can your relationship be in a good place if those are if that's the nature of the conversations?
Right, absolutely. And the Gottmans are saying it can't.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying your relationship will fail.
Yeah.
If you allow yourself to indulge in these kind of behaviors.
Scientifically,
and that's really what it is. That's really what it is. I mean, because these statements, they're not true.
Yeah.
Right. And that's when we go the never and the always. Really? I never? Really? I always? Of course not. Of course not. I mean, it's not true. Right. And it's not something that everyone would agree on as well. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. You are just terrible with the kids.
I gotta have this. Definitely criticism. Is it contempt?
You're right.
Let me ask myself. Okay.
No, that is criticism.
Okay. All right. That's the criticism, because it's making the judgment of the person. But for me, contempt is, okay, this is a hopeless situation, and for clarity there, that was criticism.
That was criticism.
Okay.
Right. So it seems like the contempt becomes even more global.
Okay.
So if you were to say,
and the global aspect of the
and it's just like, and so a complaint is very specific. Criticism is more general.
Okay.
And contempt is global.
Wow.
I think that's probably the distinction.
Yeah. Say that one more time. Say that one more time.
So complaint is very specific. Criticism is more general. Right? Always, never. And then contempt is global.
Wow. That's good. I think I understand.
So a contempt, instead of you are just terrible with the kids, that's a complaint. That's criticism. And then contempt would be, you are just terrible. You are terrible. Not you are terrible with the kids.
You are terrible.
You are terrible.
Wow.
Okay, let's see here. When we don't go out together, I feel like you take me for granted.
That's a complaint.
That's a complaint.
Yes,
it's very, very specific. And what's so interesting, because like a well-crafted complaint takes some time and some reflection. And it takes, for me, if I'm going to make a good complaint, like a legitimate complaint, I have to actually work through things besides just I'm blowing off steam because I'm upset, because I'm hurt, right? And that's where this criticism comes from, because you are blaming, because we're usually in pain when we start to have that kind of criticism. But we're not really thinking about where it comes from. We're just like, you're the one who's causing this pain. You're the problem. Instead of taking more responsibility to say, what the real problem here is, this feeling that I'm having. And I'm noticing, when this very specific thing happens, that is what triggers that pain in me. So when we don't go out together, I feel like you take me for granted. So the real problem is that I feel taken advantage of. Right. And I think this is why it is, because we don't go out together. Right. And so you could say, now I just said, we never go out together. Right. Then that becomes a criticism. Really? We never go out together? Right. So it's interesting. Okay.
Hold on. Before you give me the next one, I wanted to point this out before I lost the thought. What I'm gathering as we're going through this exercise is the person who's making the statement, these statements, they're in pain. Pain is a part of every romantic relationship. And what the Gottmans are proposing here is a pain management plan. Where you now have, a framework to be able to localize what really is bothering you. Instead of making it broad and then global, let's talk about what's really bothering you, but yet they're in pain. And so I just want to, even as we maybe take one or two more of these, just point out the fact that, if you've heard some of these statements, it's because someone's in pain. If you've made some of these statements, it's because you're in pain. And that's normal, guys. That's normal. We all have this universal predicament that's uncomfortable, and it's called pain. We don't like it, and pain causes us to do things that are less than productive. And pain that is not transformed becomes pain that is transmitted. And we have to do a better job of stewarding our pain if we're going to be better stewards of our relationships, knowing that we can't avoid pain, but we can manage it better than we have in previous seasons.
Absolutely. And I just hadn't, you know how we love to go down rabbit holes, Danny.
Yeah, I know.
This is our thing. But I was just thinking about if you were to go into a doctor and just say, I'm in pain.
Yeah.
What's the doctor going to do? He's going to say, well, where does it hurt? Right. So that's very specific. So it'd be like, well, what's the emotion that you're feeling? And then he would say, do you always feel it? Or when did this start? Right. If you have a problem with your back, well, does it happen, first thing in the morning? Does it happen when you try and pick things up? Does it happen when you twist and when you turn? I mean, so it's very specific that when we're going into a doctor, we want their help. Right? We realize we're in pain and the doctor is the one who's going to be able to help me. It's the same thing in our relationship. If you're having relationship pain, who's going to be able to help you with that? Exactly. It's going to be your partner. It's going to be your partner, but you have to be able to express it in such a way. And that kind of goes both ways, right? That if someone starts coming at you with criticism, you also have the opportunity to then be like, oh my gosh, how are you feeling?
Yes, that's good. That's really good right there. Because they're in
so
pain.
It can go both ways. It can go both ways. And it's just kind of like, just because, I mean, if your partner is really hurting, they might not have the resources to be able to find the complaint in the criticism.
That's it. Tell me what's
going on. Can you help them? Can you help them get to that point when you both know the framework? And this is why it's so essential for you to work together on the relationship. I mean, you can start and you can, this is not to say that you can't do a lot of work to help your relationship on your own. 100%. You totally can turn around because you got 50% of that relationship. 50% is huge. It really, really is. It really, really is. But just that there's a lot of room there that we can help each other. That's what's so important. That's why we don't want to get defensive. Because when that criticism comes online, the defensiveness comes online, and we're not on the same team anymore.
This is really good.
Right. And so we need to be really careful. We'll have to talk about this in another podcast, just the essentialness to continue to grow the positivity in the relationship.
Yeah.
Right. And that we need to have that solid foundation of love, respect, honor. Yeah.
Yeah. And just to remind all of our listeners, the resources that are embedded in the marriage assessment framework and book, they're designed to help you communicate and strategically get to the root in a way that is non-combative, non-threatening, and that is ultra effective and efficient with just localizing where it hurts, because we all have the hurt. If we can get to where it hurts faster, we're not going to end up on that hamster wheel of no return. You never, you always. And so we'll encourage you to regularly, systematically stay aware of the health of your romantic relationship with the marriagereportcard.com and with the recorded progress meeting, because you don't have to communicate through those broken frameworks that we've been given in the past. And this is one of many. If you don't want to use this one, you can use something else. But we have one for you so that you can better steward the process of improving and growing in love. Yeah.
Awesome.
And so, Coach Elary, we're out of time. What are your big takeaways, or what you would want to leave other people with who might be struggling in this area of their romantic relationship?
Absolutely. I think awareness is the first one. Right. We take awareness for ourselves, and how often are we criticizing our partner? How often are we showing contempt for our partner? And once we realize that, how can we really take the time to find out what the legitimate complaint is underneath the criticism or the contempt? So that would be the first step, I think, is just awareness. And I don't know if we might need to have like criticism part 2.
We might have to have criticism
Right,
part 2.
because beyond awareness, there's more that we can do. But I'm going to stick with that because, like you said, we're out of time.
Okay, we are. We want to thank everyone for listening, and most importantly, remind you that every relationship always has room to grow. If you are struggling, do not struggle unnecessarily alone. There are all kinds of resources that are available. We have some that we have already unveiled, like the M Squad, Couples Fighting Together for a Love That Lasts Forever. We talked about the marriagereportcard.com and the recorded progress meetings. We also have the Grow in Love conferences and challenges, and there's so many other things that are out there, but don't struggle alone. Get into transformational relationships so that you can get unstuck. Someone else can see those blind spots, and you can get to better days, brighter days. Hold on, because every storm eventually runs out of rain. Thank you again for tuning in. And remember, don't wish for a better relationship. Strategically work for it. You have everything to gain and nothing to lose. Let's grow together. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Grow in Love Show. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single podcast. And remember, every relationship always has room to grow.